All right, we're going to get started here. Welcome to week 3, session 2. Hopefully you guys are getting started with your assignment 3 work. If you missed the live lecture from yesterday, the recording is in the live session area, so definitely review that for important information. I did a step-by-step demonstration of how to approach your assignment 3. A few things to talk about today. We're going to go over some UX information, dive a little bit deeper into that, as well as talking about your assignment 3 continued demo. I have a few things to have you guys kind of think about as you go forward into week 4. So we're going to do a little bit of a review, and then we are going to get started with the continuation of the demo. All right, to recap sharing time, there's no one in here currently, so obviously we can't share. But if anybody were to come in here during this time, we can definitely take a look at whatever you're working on. If you have any questions about week 3, let me know. So in planning the design in assignment 3, I showed you how to start out with your icon design ideas and your screen sketches. So just kind of be mindful that you guys are going to be creating these by hand or in Illustrator, but this isn't going to be your final design. You're going to actually be transferring your final design, or actually creating your final design in InDesign as we go forward into week 4. So this is kind of just the strategy going forward, the research and development put into planning your design for your 4 screens. Don't forget, you guys also have a quiz on your assessment. Your assessment 3 is a quiz. And this is centered around UX, UI, and human-centered design. What I would do is go to your course media page and make sure you're reviewing all of your articles and videos within each week. This basically is covering everything that we've learned thus far from week 1. So that would definitely help you guys out with the quiz that is coming up. All right, assignment 2. Let's see here. This should say assignment 3. I'm not sure why it says assignment 2. Look at your notes on your PDF and the rubrics comments. If I gave you a PDF, most likely I probably just gave you the comments in the actual message area. Be sure to watch the critique for additional pointers, learn from others, and address any missing requirements. So you see the rubrics. You may receive feedback you can use from your AD. So if you were to receive feedback from when you sent it to your AD, definitely revise based on that, and upload the revisions to Behance. So don't forget that you guys need to also, refresh your Behance examples on there. For the benefit of your portfolio, you can always continue revisions after the course is over. This is just something that you need to keep in mind and be in good habit of doing, because as you go forward into the program, you're learning new techniques, new methods. You're learning the software, you're building and evolving as a student. So your work needs to also evolve. You can't just say, oh, okay, I'm done with that, now I'm going to start a new project and I'm never going to go back to that. So you want to go back and see all the past work that you've done in past classes, or even in this class, going back to your work that you already have completed to revise based on what you have learned. Okay, so we're talking about human-centered design in week 3, and we talked about the objectives, the discussion, the assignment, went over the assessment 3, and then media resources, kind of what we went over yesterday, kind of a run-through of all of this information. Don't forget assignment 3, review, introduction question. Don't forget that this is a 2-week project, so you're going to build upon this, your interface design. So this week will be the important step into week 4 for your final project. So basically week 3, your strategy and plan and icons are being put into place. You're going to choose a brand. You're going to sketch the flow of the screens, design the icons, and present your plan. So it shouldn't be actual completed screens. You're just showing your strategy and your plan. In week 4, you're going to design the actual UI windows, so your screens will be completed. I'll have, you know, I'll be doing demonstrations on how to approach each project, so don't forget. And then also, don't forget, there's also, you know, the downloads in course media to watch videos to help with each step along the way. Don't skip the steps. Study the brand. You know, study who you're going with. What's the brand all about? Research, you know, go on their website, go in the store, you know, really kind of get immersed into that. Think of the user experience part of it. You know, think of yourself as the target audience going in and looking for something on the kiosk. Consider the floor plan. Use principles of design to design the icons. So keep it simple, stupid, right? Keep it simple. We always have to keep that in mind. You know, less is more. Go back, edit your information, you know, just to keep it simple, yet interesting and unique. You can always have to ride that line. All right. All right, so for assignment 3 planning requirements, you're going to have, like I said, the 4 pages sketches. You're going to choose the typography, the text going in there, design 5 symbols to use, at least, layout in Illustrator or InDesign. It might be easier to just design your icons in Illustrator first and then lay it out for in InDesign whenever we go forward. The reason being is your final project, and we'll talk about this too, in your final week 4 project, you are going to be creating interactive buttons, and that in creating the buttons, you're going to be doing that in InDesign. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much lay out your screens in InDesign for your final project. You can do your icons in Illustrator. That's what Illustrator is used for, to create those types of icons, but then we'll kind of import it into your InDesign layout. Present with company logo. You should have your logo in there. Save the native file and save as PDF. Check rubrics for breakdown, and like, you know, if you are confused in any way, listen to the lecture. Definitely listen to yesterday's lecture. That was the first lecture for week 3. I went over a step-by-step demonstration on how to start assignment 3 and towards, you know, how to end it too. So definitely a good thing to watch. Take the 2-hour time so that you're not wasting your time trying to figure out what's going on. Icon design. We were talking about this a little bit as I was showing you how you could create icons that are unified within your 4 screens. Let's talk about icon design. There's actually a section, the Linda videos in your course media that focus on icon design. So what is icon design? What are icons? So icons communicate instructions, ideas, and actions. It's kind of like a pictogram in a way, and it explains as emojis or icons as communication. Why are icons coming back as a language? Ken talks about that as well within the videos here. It's very universal. And what I mean by that is a lot of people understand if the icon is done correctly and effectively, there's no verbiage that has to go with it. The icon should be understandable just by the actual icon itself to anybody of any language. So that's why, you know, it's so powerful. Types of icons. So which kind are you designing? There's pictograms, and I just mentioned that, and they're visual representations. Ideograms, visual representations of ideas, and then arbitrary, which are invented symbols that must be learned. So there are ones that, you know, need a little bit more signifiers to understand what they are. because they might not be as universal. Use established conventions for clear communication. So, you know, kind of conventions for clear communication. You know, if you think that the icon may not be as universal, you might need verbal communication to go with that. Maybe a headline to go with it, or a subhead, I should say. So, you know, just thinking about that, whoops, whenever you're kind of doing your icons, it's important to understand that certain icons may not be, you know, may need a little bit more explanation there. So, okay, I'm trying to get, while I'm talking here, and that's probably why I'm a little slow on what we're talking about here, arbitrary, is I'm looking up some examples of what this looks like here for each one of these, the pictograms, the ideograms. Here's a good example here. Let's see if I can get some visual examples. So give me 1 second here. Here we go. This is a good example to show you guys. All right, stop sharing and then share my screen here. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so icon types, you have pictograms, so visual representations of the objects or actions they represent. So you have a little phone here, so that would be what? Contact, phone, call, phone number would be an example of that. Ideograms, so visual representations of abstract ideas or concepts. So maybe it's telling you something like this little symbol here, which we all kind of, I don't know about you guys, but we all reference this with the do not or no sign, right? So it's abstract ideas or concepts. And then arbitrary is invented symbols that don't relate to any physical object. Their meaning must be learned. That symbol there is actually the symbol for a space. So you needed to kind of learn that a little bit more to understand what that meaning is. So those, I just wanted to show that because we were talking about that, and I figured a visual would be nice to see. Okay, design as a set and consider the look of the brand. So you're not going to design your 4 screens a different color than your logo mark, because that just wouldn't make sense, right? You wouldn't use some type of other pictures or illustrations that don't quite unify with the logo. And what I mean by that is, you know, you wouldn't add a whole bunch of extra stuff that really wouldn't go with the typical brand and how they display themselves. So that's why it's important to understand that brand. Like, you know, most of those brands listed as your choices, like Target and Walmart, you kind of already know they're pretty well ingrained into society as a whole. We kind of see commercials on TV. We go into the store, we have ads that we see. So, you know, revisit that. Take a look at how they present themselves and align your screens to unify and be cohesive with all of their look and their brand that they put out there. You wouldn't want it to have any type of disconnect from the brand itself, okay? So make sure you're kind of being aware of that. Reduce to essentials. Think of sizing. You know, so just think of how the hierarchy of your icons, you know, how are they going to look if they were to get small? Are they going to read just as easily? So just kind of think about how they are versatile in terms of sizing. Don't have color be the only difference. You know, people have color blindness. There's, you know, things that we don't think about that users could be colorblind. And if you're using color as a main part of your icon to get a message across, you might miss out. You might have people who are colorblind may miss out on that message. You know, this is same, you know, if you think about the navigation bar on websites, sometimes the only thing that changes when you see kind of where you were, it's called a crumb trail per se. So you see the navigation bar and it says, say home, the home button is shown there, and then next to it may say contact us, and the next button would say like facts about us or something like that. So you were, say if you were to click on contact us button and it takes you to that page, the navigation bar should still appear on that page, and you know you're on that page because it's emphasized in some way on the navigation bar. Don't just change the color of the name of it, because people who are colorblind may not see that color change. You might need to make it more bold, the actual word, or maybe even add an underline to the actual word itself. So that's kind of what that's talking about there. So definitely check out the Linda videos, Power of Icons, Effective Icons. We can actually take a look at some of these videos here. Let me go back to our Canvas. Oh, where are we at here? I think I have it hidden. Hold on one second, guys. Oh, no, it's right here. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so what you would do is just go to Modules. Course Media. Week 4 is, or I'm sorry, week 3 is what we're in now. So here is, you know, some links here to some articles. And then at the very bottom of this week is the Linda playlist for each week. And these videos can be accessed through the porthole. So the Power of Icons, creating effective icons, and defining a metaphor, sketching ideas is in there, how to build your creative confidence. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Power of Icons, creating effective. Let's take a look at creating effective icons. We'll take a look at that video. I'll just play that one for now, so that you guys can get started. Give me 1 second here. You can watch the Power Up icons before that, but I'll just click on this one just to take a peek here.
Creating effective icons requires careful planning and focus. Here are a few things that you're going to need to consider as you begin designing icons. First, you're going to need to determine which type of icon that you're creating. Icons can be categorized as belonging to one of 3 main types. Pictograms, which are visual representations of what they represent. Ideograms, which attempt to visually represent abstract concepts, such as the no icon that you see here. Or arbitrary icons, which are invented symbols that must be learned by the user before any connection to meaning can be made. Each of these icon types requires a slightly different approach, so it's really important to define what type you'll be designing early on. Next, you're going to want to clearly define what your icon's roles are going to be. In most cases, icons are going to fill one or all of 3 basic roles: decoration, navigation, and information. I've heard a lot of people say that if your icons are just for decoration, don't use them. I strongly disagree with that, as they can add considerable visual interest to the page. Consider how Argina uses them on their site. You'll notice that they've used icons for each one of their menu items, and another nice little touch is that the icons are animated. This adds considerable visual interest to the page. When you get into products, for example, You have individual icons for different concepts and products. And if you go to Select Heritage to learn their story and start to navigate through it, you'll notice that this sort of animation concept extends to the menu icon as well. So although icons are used simply for decoration on this site, they're used to great effect. It's also important to note that studies have shown that images can improve memory retention. So judiciously using icons in conjunction with important information can really help make a site more effective. Just remember not to overuse them. Icons can also be incredibly helpful in building navigation, especially in responsive designs as screens shrink in size. For example, I really like how Starbucks uses icons in their navigation. As you see here on the Starbucks site, they're really judicious in their use of icons. The only place you can find icons in the navigation initially are up here on your bag, which is your shopping cart, and the Find a Store. They automatically draw visual interest to those two items. So if you're coming to the Starbucks site to quickly locate a store, or you want to check and see what you shopped for so far, those two items are kind of highlighted within the menu. So they're very judiciously using it as part of the navigation. However, notice that as we begin to lose screen real estate, icons become a much more important part of the navigation. Notice that things like search, again, your shopping bag, and store location are all there represented as icons. All the other navigation is hidden under the dreaded hamburger menu, which you can open or close. But as you can see here, icons are not only adding visual interest to the page and certain elements, they're also greatly assisting with navigation. Giving the user feedback or informing them of tasks is another important role for icons. Icons can supply a large amount of information quickly and at an extremely low cost to the interface. Consider, for example, this list of some of my files and folders in Dropbox. While this is functional, it's really hard right now to categorize any of these items or what type of things they belong to. By just adding a few icons, Dropbox makes it easy to scan this list and identify files, folders, images, and shared folders. Once you know the type of icons that you're going to be creating, and you've clearly defined their role, you'll need to start designing them. Now, if possible, be sure to take advantage of existing conventions. Although these Wi-Fi icons are all from different icon sets, they're all borrowing from the established Wi-Fi convention. Now, remember that icons are shared languages. Unless there's a really compelling reason not to, you should almost always use the established conventions. It's also important to remember that you're designing icons that need to work together. Very rarely will you need to design a single icon. Both of these icon sets, the Jolly Icons by Hand Drawn Goods on the left here, and Iconic by PJ Onori, contain many of the same icons, but since they follow their own design standards, they create very different looks. If you're creating icons for a specific site, not only do they need to be consistent with each other, but they also need to match your site's aesthetics as well. You also want to avoid icons that are overly complicated. Take, for example, this set of folder icons. If they're describing actions that users can do to folders, it's really tempting to use this folder imagery that you see here. However, this can make the icons overly complex, and as you can see, really starts to limit their effectiveness at smaller sizes. It's actually much better to reduce the design elements down to their essentials. The icons read better at multiple sizes, and they're generally more effective. You also want to be careful with how you use color in icons as well. Designers will often use color to indicate status or provide feedback. Now that's fine, but here's how those same icons would look to somebody with certain forms of color blindness. Always make sure that color is simply one component that assists in the design, not the only component. And that brings up a good point about icons in general. Regardless of how you're using icons, be sure that their use doesn't impact your site's accessibility. Icons are great, but always remember that not everyone is going to have access to them. Having a strategy for how to make the information that they provide accessible to all of your users is critically important.
Okay, so that's part of the of your playlist for your course media for week 3, and I think that's the second video in your list for week 3. You should definitely check out the first one, which kind of gives you a little like overview of what icon design is. It's just a nice supplement to the course, so those definitely add to your experience in the classroom, and you're, obviously you're gaining more out of it. So we kind of talked about a little bit about color and keeping the icons look similar in design, which kind of they explained in that video as well. So just keep that in mind going forward. Tips for successful icon design. And again, these are all part of those videos and articles within our course media. Use a grid structure. Simple geometric shapes are always great. Use gestalt, so positive and negative, really play around with that, how that kind of works together. Consistent design elements, you want it to be consistent or else it'll just be disconnected in terms of the overall look. Icons are not pictures, so just kind of keep that in mind. They're more of like a pictogram of sorts, so they should not be actual pictures. Must be recognizable. You know, you don't want to have a symbol that looks kind of like, what is that? Because obviously it's not going to work. So make sure they're recognizable. You can still design it to be your own style, but make sure the actual icon is something that everybody understands what it is. Simplified language crosses language barriers. Like I said, it's universal. So research, the process of creating icon design, you know, start your research, explore. Research, part of the research is listening to those videos that we just watched or that video we just watched. Looking up different icons for inspiration. Explore and sketch out some ideas. Test the group. You know, maybe ask people to look at it and see if they can tell what that icon represents, and then implement it. You know, that's when you actually place it into your layouts and see how the user responds to it. So simple icon design versus complex icon design. So simple is quick comprehension, easy to colorize, flexible use, and helps scaling. So quick comprehension, you get it right away. You know, it shouldn't be something that you need to study and try to figure out. Easy to colorize, you know, so this would be a simple shape to, you know, create in a color of choice. Flexible use, you know, can be used in many different applications. Helps scaling, so if you're scaling it down, you're going to be able to understand what that symbol is even when it's smaller in size. Complex icon design is distracting details. There's maybe too much going on where it's distracting. Complicated colors, maybe there's just so many different colors, it just kind of gets a little complicated, you know, it starts to disconnect in that regards. Difficult to adapt, and that means, like, you know, you can't, when you apply it to something else, you know, say it goes from a mobile app you're placing the icon onto, and then you see it on another application, say a website, and it doesn't look the same. You know, it's not adapting, it's not versatile. Inhibits scaling, so maybe when it gets smaller, it's harder to read because it's too complex. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind whenever you're designing your icons. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to go forward with the rest of the lecture. So I'm going to kind of give my voice a rest here, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, sorry it took a little longer than 5 minutes, but let's go forward with our slides here. Talking about effective icons using shape versus line. Find a reference image. Don't rely on memory. Go online, like I was showing you yesterday in the lecture. Find a reference image that you can be inspired by and kind of use as you're styling your own icon. Okay, so this way, you're not kind of just, creating from scratch. Totally, you have an idea of what the icon should look like in terms of the overall shape. Think about the figure ground, positive, negative shapes, designing in one color just to see how the positive and the negative space kind of work together. Illustrator Shape Builder, select shapes and drag to use. You can also use the Pathfinder to unite the shapes together, as well as do cutouts. And I showed yesterday a demo of kind of some things that you could play around with starting your icons. We'll take a look a little bit more in detail today. All right. All right, so assessment 3, don't forget, is your quiz. You have 10 questions. Each have a short reading. Also includes content and media readings on human-centered design, The overview pretty much is what we've covered so far. I am not really allowed to go over what is the questions on the quiz are going to be. But just telling you what we have kind of gone over so far from week 1 in the lecture, as well as what's in your course media and in the actual discussions is what will be on the actual quiz itself. So what is human-centered design? So this all kind of relates to the quiz too. So this will be very helpful to review. You don't have to be an expert in every specific industry to create a good design. To be an expert in the process on how to design, which equals problem solving. So human-centered design is basically the process in how humans access a certain thing. So like a kiosk, for instance, how kind of thinking about the actual person using it. The research goes around this person who's trying to access the actual kiosk. How are they interacting with the actual kiosk screen is a lot to do with the human-centered design for this particular project. So it starts with the people you're designing for, and there's 3 main phases with human-centered design. One is the inspiration phase. I might have to close my window here in a second. I think there's some outside noises. Give me 1 minute here. All right, there was some outside noises. I didn't want to get into the way of you guys hearing what I'm saying here. Inspiration phase, you immerse yourself in their lives, empathy and understanding, learn directly from the people you're designing for. So inspiration phase is very similar to the research and development stage where you're kind of gathering the information. If you were designing something for print or, a website, this would be the design brief part of the stage. You would research the competitors. You would research the target audience. You would research the actual company you're designing for, the overall message that you're, looking into. What's the problem you're trying to solve? So the inspiration phase is very similar to that. You're kind of immersing yourself. You are that target audience. Number 2 is the ideation phase, prototyping, feedback. So generating tons of ideas, building a bunch of prototypes, so mock-ups, testing your solutions. Like, You could even have a group of people that you're giving the mock-ups to kind of interact with and see how, if they're doing it correctly, or maybe they're not, and you need to fix something and tweak something. So this is the brainstorming part of the stage, the brainstorming and you know, the mock-up stage. Implementation phase is bring your solutions to life. So you're launching that idea, you're producing it, you're creating it so that it can be experienced. So those are the 3 main phases of human-centered design. IDEO's 5 steps and 7 mindsets designkit.org is what this is from. And this is actually in your course media as an article to read from IDEO's website. Number 1, empathize, understand your audience. So in order to understand who you're speaking to, you have to understand who your audience is, who you're communicating to. Define, number 2, establish a point of view. So you have to have some type of point of view in order to create your concept. Number 3, ideate, focus on possible solutions. So you're solving a problem there. Prototype is number 4, try out multiple solutions, you know, create some prototypes. One may be stronger than the other, or, you know, you never know, kind of, you know, see how it works. You're testing it out. Number 5, find the best solution for your audience. Okay, so you're testing it out with the audience itself. Number 1, creative confidence. This is the 7 mindsets with your overall project. Make it. Number 2, 3, failure. Empathy, embrace ambiguity, optimism, and irritate. So creative confidence is the belief that everyone is creative in a way of understanding the world, trusting your intuition as a designer, chasing solutions you haven't totally figured out yet, solutions to big problems, to get it wrong and keep on rolling is secure. So you know, you learn from your mistakes. Sometimes you come up with the greatest solutions and ideas from making certain mistakes. Innovate along the way. Can take time to build. You know, it's all part of the process. Start with small successes and then build to bigger ones. So you have to have that creative confidence to come up with some creative solutions. And then make it, test them. Actually, making something reveals opportunities and complexities that we'd never have guessed were there. You might not understand, you might create a prototype and totally think that the person's going to use it in a particular following way, like look at it and unfold or kind of do something with that. You have this set of like, okay, this is what this person's going to do. You give the prototype to this person, they do it completely opposite. You know, you just never know. You really get some good insights by actually watching the person interact with it without saying anything, so that you can kind of problem solve as you go forward. Share the prototype, evaluate, and learn how to make it better. You can prototype anything at any stage of the process. I know I did this with one of my mock-ups for a college project, my master. I was attending SCAD for my graduate studies, and I created a prototype for a project that we were working on, and it was kind of interesting to see people interact with it. Got some really good insight in that regards before actually implementing it. Getting ideas out of our heads and into the hands of the people we are looking to serve. Failure, an incredibly powerful tool for learning. You know, a lot of us are fearful of failing, but failure is definitely something that you can really learn the most out of, you know, because, you know, you're learning, and that's part of all learning is, you know, at some point you are going to fail. Start from a place of not knowing what the solution to a given design challenge might be. By listening, thinking, building, and refining our way to an answer, do we get something that will work? I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that doesn't work, that won't work. To think about in that regards. Failure is an inherent part of human-centered design. So it's going to happen. It's just you kind of have to go through the trial and error. When human-centered designers get it right, it's because they got it wrong first. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. Empathy, the capacity to step into another person's shoes and understand their lives. So to have empathy with the target audience, the person that's accessing whatever you are creating, is super important to understand where they're coming from, their needs and their wants. Solve problems from their perspectives. It's almost like coming up with an invention of some sort, you know, where you're kind of stepping inside, or you have been there before and you want to solve a problem, kind of that regard. See the world and all the opportunities to improve it through a new and powerful lens. You know, how can you improve upon this, you know, this particular user experience so that it's quicker and easier and more clear, opens you up to new creative possibilities, allows you to leave behind preconceived ideas and outmodeled ways of thinking. Embrace ambiguity. So definition and exactness, being open to more than just one interpretation. Start from the place of not knowing the answer to the problem. Pursue lots of different ideas. Arrive at unexpected solutions. It's almost like a mind map. You start with one idea and then you kind of branch off into all these other ideas. The process will guide us towards an innovative answer. Don't cling to ideas any longer than you have to. You know, kind of if you're stuck, you go on to the next. There will always be more ideas. Discard bad ones. Hold on to pieces of the so-so ones. You know, you might come up with some crazy ideas, and those crazy ideas might be some of the best ideas. So it's all about brainstorming. The ambiguity of not knowing the answer sets you up to innovate, which is kind of interesting. Frees us to pursue an answer that we can't initially imagine. So instead of being so focused on one solution, it's you're embracing, you know, the possibility of other options in other ways. Optimism. We have to believe that progress is even an option. Driving us towards solutions, making us more creative. Push on when we hit dead ends. You know, it gives us that, okay, let's regroup type of a deal. Infuses the entire process with energy. You know, you might have some roadblocks that kind of get you frustrated, and then you get negative. Well, where's that going to get you? It's just going to go, you know, it could go negative from there on out because you have this negativity, and it's just, you're going to stop thinking about options and solutions because you're hung up on something. So being optimistic, saying, okay, this failed, let's try something else, you know, very quickly switch that to, you know, change your channel so that you're thinking, okay, this didn't work, let's go on and try something else. That will get you to success quicker, or more successful ideas quicker. Constraints are inevitable, but often push you toward unexpected solutions. So maybe there's a reason why you went down that certain path and it doesn't work, because it's kind of going to guide you somewhere else that's more effective in the long run. The belief that every problem is solvable. So you kind of have this optimism, this hope that you're going to find the actual solution, and you can solve it. Iterate, iterate, iterate. Definition: perform repeatedly. So it means repeat, perform repeating. Feedback from people. We are designing for a critical part of how solution evolves. So you're getting that feedback from people, so you're kind of continually refining and improving our work. It's just part of the process. Try a variety of approaches. Keeps us nimble and responsive. Trains our focus on getting the idea and every detail just right. So you're kind of honing in on it. Allows us the opportunity to explore, to get it wrong, to follow our hunches, and allows us to keep learning. You know, the only way to grow is to learn and evolve. So repeat. Real problem solving. So the best human-centered innovations are originated from specific needs, not consumer trends. So think about that. So if there's a specific need for something, if something's hard to access, there might be a need for that. Is often spurred by ideas that adapt something that already exists to a contemporary need. So it could be something that's in place right now, but maybe it's not the best solution. So maybe there's already a kiosk at the front of Target, but the kiosk maybe isn't as easily accessible. Maybe the buttons aren't as clear as they could be. Maybe it doesn't flow as clearly as it should from screen to screen. So problem solving and using that problem that was originally placed there to be a solution, you can create something more effective. So real problem solving is discovered while the designer is putting themselves in the user's position. And especially if you are that user, it's kind of easier to do it that way, so you can see the problems that arise and then try to solve them. Human-centered ideas come from random exposure or from repeated experience, but are always based on problem solving. So prototypes and brainstorming. The quality of the prototype is not a big concern. So it's not like, it has to be the final product, but the idea is just to be able to have something to work with and to test. Testing and revision often is important during this time. So you might just mock something up for somebody to look at and to use, and then you're kind of basing information off of how observing how they use it, and then going back and revising it if need be, or going back to the brainstorming part of it if it's totally off base. Feedback on your prototypes is best when having personal conversions on site, using interactive prototypes. You're not giving it a lot of instructions or directions to the user. So more of an interactive prototypes, as far as this is a great example for the kiosk because this would be on site. It would be more interactive. So feedback is best on these so that you can, get this to the best possible function as you can. If it's not running right or if it's not easily accessible, you need to know that. Different approaches to generate ideas. So traditional ways is doing online research of statistics, tests, and surveys. Guarding ideas for individual opportunities. And once the design process is final, making one final quality prototype for consumer testing. That's for traditional approaches. Human-centered approaches to generate ideas, talking to the people in the environment you're designing for. Getting that insight from them is what's working, what's not working. Sharing ideas and working as a team, so more collaborative nature in terms of generating ideas. Having rough prototypes tested during the design process. Okay. So that's kind of just a little bit of an insight to human-centered design, and different methods and techniques, things to kind of keep in mind when you are designing for the kiosk or for other user experience solutions. All right, so we're going to go right back to, let me open up Illustrator here. As we kind of finished off on, yesterday, I was showing you in Illustrator how to create your 4-screen, just sketches. This is not your final product by any means. And this doesn't have to be done in Illustrator. You can actually sketch this out and place it in Illustrator and then export it out. You can go in and actually place the logo in here if you want, but everything else should be sketched out So pretty rough in regards to where everything needs to be. But you can place the logo in there if you want. I believe that's what the instructions say too. So I wanted to mention a couple things before we go forward. Let me get this in place here. Because I noticed some things in the instructions for week 4 that I want to make note of. Because I think it's a little confusing, so I wanted to kind of try to streamline it a little bit when we get into, whoops, our week 4 information. So everything that I went through yesterday for the demo is good. So, you know, plot out your ideas of your grid structure, how you're going to display it, and then start honing in on your icon design. The last page here, I'm starting to kind of create these icons based on the buttons that I want to show and trying to keep it relatable to the brand by color and maybe the part of the logo that's implemented into the icons themselves. And then I showed you how to export that out as a PDF for submission. The one thing I wanted to bring to your attention, let me go back to Canvas here. I think this is important to talk about. So I'm going to go back to assignment 3, instructions. So we kind of went through all of this overview here and the prompts, the instructions. And it tells you in here to use InDesign or Illustrator to lay out your preliminaries and plans. If you did hand sketches, place images of these in the document. So why I'm bringing this up is because I started to show you in Illustrator how to lay out your plans. But next week, we're actually going to be designing your pages in InDesign. So we aren't going to be sticking with Illustrator. The only thing Illustrator is really good for at this point is your icon creation. So when we go into week 4, you guys will be setting up your pages in InDesign and importing your icons into InDesign. And the reason being is because in week 4, if you read ahead, we are going to be creating interactive buttons, and that's there's buttons in InDesign that you use to make your screens interactive. Now we don't have to worry about that until week 4, but I wanted to give you a heads up so you won't be designing all of your screens in Illustrator, and you won't be designing it in Photoshop. I bring that up because in week 4, if you go to week 4 and you actually click on the assignment 4, in the actual prompt, it tells you to create the screens in Photoshop. Okay, but we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of skip that, and we're going to design this in InDesign. You're given a template in InDesign for the kiosk to place the template in. So we're just going to keep it in InDesign. There's no reason why we should go to Photoshop really at this point, because we're going to be creating the interactive buttons in InDesign. So we're just going to kind of ignore the whole take everything into Photoshop part of this assignment 4. So I will set a reminder and announcements too, but I wanted to let you guys know that we will not be. It's kind of confusing to go back and forth so much, and I wanted to streamline it a little bit. So really, there's no reason why you guys should be placing it in Photoshop. So we're going to be designing the final project in InDesign, and then we're going to be creating your mock-ups in InDesign as well. And then for assessment 4, which is next week, you're going to be creating buttons in InDesign for your screens. And we'll go over that in week 4, but I just wanted to give you a heads up so that you know why, you know, which software you're using and why. and you don't get too confused, because I think some of this can be a little confusing, especially when they tell you to go back and forth with different programs. So there's no need to go into Photoshop for a week 4 assignment. Just keep it in InDesign. And I will do a demo next week for week 4 live lecture 1. I'll show you how to create your pages in InDesign, so that you're transferring your information from Illustrator into InDesign, how to import your icons, how to set up your pages, and then also for assessment for the last live lecture, I'll show you how to create buttons. So we'll get into all that as we go forward. But I wanted to show you that because as I was looking forward, I was trying to make sense of what would be easier for you guys, and I think that is the easiest way to go with that. So what we'll be doing this week, you'll be creating your sketches, your ideas, your pages like I did here in Illustrator, excuse me. Just very roughed out, for placement only stuff going on here to kind of start your plan of what it's going to look like. And then next week, you're going to actually open up InDesign, and you're going to create the actual screens. And next week, I'll show some student examples. I don't want to show it right now because I feel like they're too finished. They're almost like final designs to show you guys for this week, and you really shouldn't be at that point right now. So I don't want to show you, more polished looks, because I don't want to confuse you on what is due for this week. So next week, I will show you kind of more polished screens that other students have done, so that you guys have just a little bit more of a better sense of what other people have done, get inspired by. I just don't want to show it to you yet, because I don't want to confuse people. For assignment 3, you don't need to have it looking finished. You can have your icons designed if you want. I believe it says it in there. You can have the logo in there, but other than that, it should just be, a wireframe or sketched out thumbnails at this point. Okay, now I would set this up to be 8.5 by 5.5. So that fits in nicely with your mock-ups that are in week 4 that you can place in there. So 8.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall in Illustrator is kind of how I would set that. All right, and if you want to look ahead into week 4, there's all these videos in the course media, lynda.com videos, and showing you how to implement the buttons and all that. We'll be getting into that in week 4, but if you have time and you wanted to work ahead, you definitely can do that. I am just going to, since I went over a lot of stuff yesterday and somewhat of a lot of material today, I'm going to wrap this up a little early. And then next week, I will show you how to get this implemented, all your screens laid out in InDesign for the first lecture. And like I said, the second lecture, I'll show you how to implement your buttons. So in the meantime, if you guys have any questions as you go forward, let me know. Don't forget to post your discussion. Initial post needed to be posted by tonight before midnight. So get that in before midnight tonight. Your initial post for discussion 3. And don't forget to respond to different peers for possible full credit. It all kind of adds up, so you don't really want to lose those points. 60 points can be a lot of points. So make sure you're getting that in during the time frame it's due. If not, just it's a little different than regular assignments. If you post after the due date for discussions, it won't be credited. That's the only thing that's excluded from the grace period, of the late grace period. So if you still have work that needs to be turned in from week 2, make sure you're getting that in before Sunday by midnight for possible credit. everything, you know, every point counts. So make sure you're getting that in, and, you know, kind of give yourself some time to go from last week to this week. Since this project's going to build into next week, you need that time to revise, research, develop, and go forward with your concepts. Go into Walmart, go into Target, go into Home Depot, Michael's, whichever one that you decide to do, go in there today or this weekend, maybe before the weekend. Just see what they got going on. Just look at their ads, look at their website. Immerse yourself into the actual store. You know, kind of be very aware of how their look is, their style, their brand is all about. They might have a on-store kiosk available, even if it's, you know, for maybe a registry. Go up and take a look at it, play around with it, kind of get a good idea, sense of how it works. That way, you know, when you start designing for this, it may not look similar in regards to what you're going to have on it, but you get an idea of how it works and how accessible it may be. You can get some inspiration from that as well. So, you know, kind of immerse yourself into that brand. All right, let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to wrap it up for today. I will be here all the time, so if you have any issues, questions, you know, definitely contact me. All right, guys. Have a great weekend if I don't talk to you, and hopefully we will be ending this week very strong.